All right, so I want to spend the time that we have in this segment talking about our election, the election of 2020, and our voting process here in America in general. Not only for the implications that it has, but I think it really is a great window into the mindset of the left and the right when it comes to election. So obviously, if you haven't been sleeping under a rock for the last couple weeks, we have an election that seems to fall towards Biden. It does seem, as it stands now, that Biden is going to win the 2020 election. The Trump administration does have a couple battles in court in a couple of states. I don't know of enough evidence to overturn the election. It could be it's out there. I know there are some constitutional battles. I don't know if it's enough to turn the election. I haven't seen enough to turn the election. So as it stands, it seems that the elector will be Joe Biden. But that's not what I want to talk about. I don't want to speculate about who's going to win. It seems Biden's going to win. We'll find out eventually. But I do think just the back and forth that we're hearing from the left and the right as far as the allegations that have been alleged, and again, our voting process in general, is really astounding. Again, besides for whoever won next. But there does seem to be legitimate irregularities, legitimate questions, legitimate concerns, and people that are coming forward with firsthand witnesses making claims that, if true, are astounding. Now, these are things that should be looked at, right? When you have a vote, we have a voting process. When people are alleging that something fraudulent behavior was or wrongdoing occurred, that's something that should be probed. That's something that should be looked into. That is not a political statement. It doesn't make a difference what political party you're from. It's a simple question. This is the simple question. Should allegations of voter fraud be looked into? The obvious answer is yes, of course. But when it comes to this election, which we have way more claims of voter fraud than any election before, we have the Democratic Party that want to rule out all of them as a priori false and deem anybody who so much as raises a question as a conspiracy theorist. Now, just on the face of that, how does that make any sense? Again, ask yourself this question. Should allegations of voter fraud be taken seriously? Should they be looked into? If your answer to that question is no, then there's no conversation that we can have. Frankly, you're not somebody that I think is worth conversing with. If you think that voter fraud allegations should not be looked into, then I don't know what to tell you. If your answer to the question is yes, then how come in this instance not? There are serious allegations. I know Sidney Powell just released about a 104-page suit in Georgia. I didn't finish it. I started reading it. And goddamn, if 10% of that is true, we have a serious problem. But again, the Democrats say, no, all of this is false. Our voting, because there's a governmental agency that told us our voting process more secure than it's ever been. So it has been more secure than it's ever been, which I've never seen anybody have so much trust and faith in a single governmental agency. But I guess when it falls out on their side, it says things they like to hear. They're all for it. But again, there are legitimate concerns that have to be addressed by anybody who gives a damn about the integrity of our voting process. I mean, the irregularities and then but just the sheer number of, first of all, the fact that Joe Biden, not the most liked person in the world, not even close, a known plagiarizer, somebody who needed help from the DNC to even make it past the Democratic primaries, where there was a good shot that Sanders was going to take it. The DNC helped him out right before Super Tuesday. Is going to go on and get more votes than any presidential nominee in history, far surpassing Obama. I mean, again, that doesn't necessarily mean voter fraud, but again, that's a legitimate question that should be asked. Somebody who had 5 to 10 people at his rallies, beating somebody who had between 10 and 50,000 at his rallies. It's a question that should be asked. Somebody who, I believe, what was his Thanksgiving live stream, had about 1,000 people watching. I mean, again, is it possible that all of Biden's supporters don't have access to the internet and don't like rallies? Possible. There could be a million other explanations, but these are questions. And when you have a pattern of them, 5, 10, 15, 100, 200, 300 questions that all line up and can all be answered with a single answer, it becomes tough to just knock it under the rug. It becomes tough to just ignore it. It's easy to ignore it. I get it. Your nominee won. You want him to have won, so you want to ignore it. I get it. Here's the thing. You could have just been honest. Hey, Biden won. But if there's any irregularities, any allegations of fraud, that should certainly be looked into. But they have to take this ridiculous position that no, all voter fraud never impossible to have voter fraud, which is also funny, being the fact that the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, NBC, amongst a bevy of other left-leaning news sites, quote unquote news, have all been making such allegations of voter fraud and the fact that our voting system is susceptible to fraud. They've all been making these claims. They've been hosting experts, and whether it's tech experts or whatnot, that all made claims that it's possible. The second Biden wins, no, it's not possible anymore. I mean, come on. That makes no sense. Forget about the inconsistency. It's just ridiculous to claim that the fraud cannot happen when there are hundreds, if not thousands, of allegation sworn under oath, under penalty of perjury. And again, I was just in Georgia, Sidney Powell, and I read it. There are some damning testimonies in there. Some damning testimonies. And those testimonies, by the way, also answer a lot of these irregularities. Can Dominion voting system be hacked? A lot of tech experts seem to say yes. I mean, some big names. Now, I'm not an expert. I know all of a sudden everybody becomes an expert in voting machines, just like everybody became an expert when it comes to masks and viruses. Everybody became doctors suddenly. So I don't know, but this is something that should be looked into. There's serious allegations by tech experts, people that this is their field, saying that they can prove that this can happen. Let's find out. Let's put it on trial. But the fact that one party is just sweeping this all under the rug and saying, no, it's all impossible. I mean, come on. You gotta get serious about this. It makes no sense to do that. But even more so, let's talk about just our voting process in general. Forget about this past election. We'll come back to that. But let's talk about our voting process in general. The left has been on this mission that has been undermining the integrity of our voting process for a while now. There is disagreement between the left and the right in regards to a number of things, whether voter ID laws, mail-in ballots, ballot harvesting, signatures matching. I mean, there's just so many disagreements, and every single disagreement is that the Democrats, the left, that they are putting forth policies that will undermine the integrity of our election. That's indisputable. They say, however, they're on this noble quest to enfranchise voters. So they're willing to tarnish the integrity of our election, but they voter enfranchisement. They want to enfranchise as many voters as they can, which is a nice thing to do. I mean, I'm all for it. I'm game. I'm in. I'd like as many people as possible to vote. But that can't come at a cost of tarnishing the integrity of our election process. It can't work like that, and it makes no sense to work like that. One is paramount. The other is secondary. I mean, I could come up with a more simple process that could get, I'm sure, more people to vote, and that's text messages. Everybody just send a text message. Or even better yet, everybody just stand on your porch and just scream the nominee you're voting for. You could get everybody to vote that way. Then again, obviously it's stupid. Obviously that makes no sense. Nobody would advocate that, because we are opening the door to fraud. We are opening the door to people defrauding our election. So how come over here it's not only is it not frowned upon, but like they sit there on their high horse as if like they're the ones that are doing God's good work. I mean, come on. Now, I know I've had this conversation a number of times in the past with Democrats, and they start citing statistics of there's only X amount of proven cases of voter fraud in the past. Well, 2 points on that. One, that's like saying that if you were to ask me how many people were speeding last year, and I were to answer you that the amount of people that were speeding is equal to the amount of people that have gotten tickets for speeding, I think we could both agree that's a ridiculous statement. Obviously, there were more people speeding, just more people commit crimes. Those that commit more people commit crimes, those are caught committing crimes. I think that's pretty obvious. So to say that the only amount of voter fraud is equal to the amount of times people got caught is just a complete non sequitur. I just think that doesn't at all logically follow. But even more important, what exactly is the process? What goes into and what is necessary to catch this fraud? Say mail-in fraud. Let's say the mail-in ballots. Somebody was to defraud it. Somebody was to take a ballot that wasn't intended for them. They see a ballot. And I have friends that have shown me, I've seen it, and I'm sure practically every single person knows somebody or has seen it themselves. Ballots that people have received from parents, grandparents, relatives that have been deceased for years. They're still getting mail-in ballots. Now, for all these cases, mail-in ballots, sometimes they're not deceased, but they've moved. Sometimes you're just able to get your hands on one because that's what happens when you send out tens of millions of ballots unrequested. Now, if somebody was to fraudulently fill out somebody else's ballot and send it in, what process exactly is there in place that's going to catch all of those? You see, you can't say, oh, nobody's been caught, so it's not happening, unless you can have a process in place to catch them. You see, one way maybe of catching it would be signature verification. That I think would be a good one. The weird thing is the Democrats want to do away with that, which is weird, because that kind of undermines the entire point of a signature. You know, signatures aren't just a competition for who has the nicest scribble. The point of a signature is an authentication, a verification that it is I who is doing this. When I sign a check, that is me showing that it is I who is doing it. That's kind of the point. So why would we want to do away with those restrictions? Why would we try to eliminate that, or as much as we can? Give me one reason, one semi-coherent reason why we should not be extremely strict and stringent on signatures matching. Give me one reason. I haven't seen one. Voter ID laws. Give me one reason somebody wouldn't have to produce a government issued state ID when voting. One reason, and I know they have this odd theory that minorities are not capable of obtaining voter IDs, which I think is pretty racist and demeaning. I think they're just as capable as anybody else in doing so. It's just a ridiculous claim on its face. I mean, it's a stupid claim. It is a dumb claim. Please show me. Introduce me to one person who is not able to obtain an ID. Show me. A case came before the Supreme Court, and late Justice Antonin Scalia, when it came to voter ID, he came out as clear as day, and he said there is absolutely no reason in the world, no rationale, there is no inconvenience about getting a voter ID, getting state ID, and he said, quote unquote, I believe that is the end of the matter, or something like that. It's just something so simple. There's no debate over that. It's the left trying to take away all of the weapons we have in our arsenal, all of the ways that we have to ensure that our voting process is done in an integral fashion, and that we can eliminate to the best of our ability any wrongdoing and any fraudulent behavior. They're doing away with it. And you have to ask yourself, why? And I think this is what leads a lot of people on the right to believe that there is widespread voter fraud. Because if there isn't, why in the world would you advocate such ridiculously dumb policies? It's dumb. I'm sorry. We can have discussions. We can have honest and open discussions about scope and role of government, optimal taxation. We can have these discussions. But this isn't a discussion we can have. Again, if I was to come and say, everybody just shoot a text message who you're voting for, that's not a discussion. These are ridiculous policies advocated by the left, and every single one of them, every single one undermines the integrity of our election. Again, they're in this noble quest of enfranchising voters, which makes no sense, because who cares about enfranchising voters if you're going to diminish what a vote actually counts for if you're opening the door to fraud? But I mean, just on its face, it's just it's a ridiculous position to take. So we have the left, Democratic Party, that has been fighting in court to undermine the integrity of our election, of our voting process, more generally, by general rules. Then comes the actual election, and we have irregularities from today to tomorrow. It was just was the CEO of Overstock was I forgot what show he was on. He was going over just the sheer numbers, the mathematical improbability of how the votes were falling, of the mail-in ballots, the percentage, just the odds of those numbers happening. Again, I haven't looked into it. I don't know if I'm not an expert on these things. I'm just a regular guy asking normal questions. And we just have an entire party just shooting down these questions as if they're nothing. Again, this is the same party that for 4 years was hashtagging not my president because Igor and Vladimir were on a computer somewhere with a fake Facebook account, and that rigged our election. But hundreds, if not thousands, of sworn affidavits under oath, under penalty of perjury, are all coming and saying, I've witnessed this person do this person taking Biden ballots and taking Trump ballots and putting to Biden pile. So many of these. How can we shoot it down? It makes no sense. If you are a person that shoots all of these allegations down as a priori false, then you do not care about the integrity of our election. Just come out and say it. Don't hide behind this mask of being on, again, this noble cause of you're the protector of the integrity of our election. It's Trump and the Republicans that are undermining it. I mean, I truly hope that the majority of Americans see past this, and it's legitimately sad if they don't. So Trump is now taking this to courts, which is his legal right. He's perfectly allowed to do that. And now the Democrats are saying, oh, he's undermining our institutions. Well, first of all, conceding after media calls the election is not an institution. Perhaps a norm, but not an institution. Second of all, since when are progressives and liberals so averse to undermining of institutions? I mean, their MO kind of is to undermine our institutions. So I didn't get that as well. We could perhaps say that it's a norm, but I for one am really happy that this norm is not going to be a norm anymore. I mean, the greatest thing that we can have to protect the integrity of our election, and it's really the only thing we have, is our ability to question it. Is our ability to say, hey, I've witnessed this, I've seen this, hey, this doesn't add up to me, and to take it through an independent court. What other way do we have to ensure the integrity of our election? I mean, trusting a government agency, for one, that's not really, for me, the biggest, the easiest way for me to accept something as being legitimate. But in general, if there is widespread voter fraud, if there is, hypothetically, then it runs deep. Obviously, there's something that goes into it. It's not just Bob calls Jill like, hey, yeah, let's do voter election, yay. Obviously, there's planning. God knows how much money that goes into it. Hypothetically, if. So to start hanging your hat on, oh, this person or this one single agency said that, it's I don't know if I'd say meaningless, but it's pretty damn close. And I love when they're doing recounts and, oh, you're accusing us of fraudulent behavior, so let's have the same people oversee the recount. I mean, the whole thing is just the only checks and balances that we have on our voting process. The fact that we can spot irregularities, see issues, bring it to an independent court. That's exactly what Trump's doing. Now, the left is demeaning him and as he's ruining this. No, Trump is not undermining any institution. And what he's doing is good. If this would have been any other president that didn't have the balls that Trump has, they would have conceded. Practically none of this fraud would have come to light. I think that's just a simple observation, and it is if your position is that it is not good that all this fraud is coming to light, then you really don't care about the integrity of our voting process. I mean, again, then you're not somebody that should be talked to I don't care about your opinion. I mean, if you don't want fraud to be exposed, then your opinion just really doesn't matter all that much. If your position is fraud should be exposed, then you should have no problem with what's going on. If there was fraud, thank God it was exposed. If there was no fraud, then who cares? Who cares what? So Trump didn't concede right away? Oh, wow. Oh, so what happened exactly? How did that ruin your life? Tell me, really. Tell me how that hurt you. Oh, because it's a norm? Good. Let's ruin this norm. Let's make the new norm that any single person that has a claim of voter fraud should feel comfortable bringing it to light. It should go through an independent court system. If it turns out to be false, we'll throw it out. And guess what? I can guarantee you that God knows how many of these allegations are false. I'm sure of it. I'm sure. But that's not how it works. You can't say because X amount, or even if whatever the amount is, are false, therefore we throw them all out. Every single one has to be independently verified or not, and each one dealt with accordingly and appropriately. It's also awesome. I mean, these are people that, like, one woman claimed she remembers vaguely that a man of pristine, a man with a pristine record, she believes raped her like 40 years ago. The left, the Democratic Party, like, oh, I know it happened for sure, true, damn him, to hell with him, he's a rapist, Oh, but we have hundreds, if not thousands, of sworn affidavits. Oh, but they're all false. I mean, my hope and my belief is that the majority of Americans will see right through this facade. It's truly sad to see what has happened in the last couple of weeks. Again, I welcome and I love debate and discussion about many things political, things that I vehemently disagree with, but I can understand the discussion. I can understand that people have a different opinion, but there are certain things that are objective, and we have to put objective glasses on. And the Democratic Party, when it comes to the election and our voting process in general, are just being so subjective and insincere that it just has to be mentioned. It has to, I hope and I pray that the majority of Americans see right through this so that we can change it. Our voting process is just not a good one. It's archaic. It's old. I think the reason for that happens to be the lack of incentive, because there's no market really. There's no competition. It's government giving out contracts to people with connections. I think that goes into an economic discussion, not for now, but something that should be talked about. The fact is, our voting system is archaic, and it's just not one that we can have confidence in. And if we cannot have confidence in our election, then we can't have confidence in who is presumed to be the victor of the election, and then we can't have a country anymore. We just simply can't. We need to get around this, figure out a better voting process, and be willing to listen to and pay attention to claims of wrongdoing and fraudulent behavior. My hope is that we are able to do that regardless of who wins this election. Anyways, thanks for watching. Please feel free to like, comment, and share. If you're not already following my page, please feel free to follow. I'm going to be putting out more content on some other issues that are dividing our country. Thanks again for watching.